Yeah, I'll introduce you if you'd like, Jorge. So Jorge Espinosa and I met 6 years ago when I was in college at UC Davis in California. And we met because we were both involved with a D Lab, which is a development lab. That was a graduate level class. Even though I was undergrad, maybe I was a little bit of an overachiever. But 6 years later, here we are. Jorge is a nurturer of people and ecosystems. He's passionate about endeavors that range from the creative to the scientific, and especially ones that bridge divergent ways of being and interacting with the world. His favorite kind of creative project is where the landscape and the community come together to blur the edges of canvas and artist, reimagining our food systems into masterpieces of resilience and collaboration. That sounds like exactly what we need. And Jorge holds a Master of Science in Integrative EcoSocial Design. So Jorge, the floor is yours. Tell us about your adventures in EcoSocial Design.
Thanks, Rachel. It's
welcome.
a privilege to kick off the series. We're gonna do one of the similar ones, and yeah, there's a lot has happened since. I'd love to start. Thanks for your lovely introduction, and it's really good to reconnect with you. Yeah.
So good.
Maybe we all look away from the screen for a second, maybe like stare out a window, just take a deep breath or three. And yeah, like feel a little bit of that capacity we have for stillness in the eye of the storm. Let in a little bit of the gratitude for the earth just holding us up and nurturing us and feeding us, and sending a little bit of love and of recognition to the people who have stewarded the land we are on. I'm in Davis, and this is Patwin land. And trying to connect to the story of whatever place we're each in. The story as it unfolds, and as it unfolds with us in it. Looking back and looking into the future to the potential, that potential of resilience, the potential of greater health and interbeing and interconnectedness of people and ecosystem, the relationships that are playing out on the land politically, socially, in our homes, in our neighborhoods, and in our very own selves. Yeah, there's so much to like hold together in this time, and it really does feel like, at least for me, like there's a lot of things that are pulling in so many directions, and just trying to bridge all of these things is difficult, and the only way out is through. And so we breathe deep into that. Yeah, I'm grateful to be here. I'm grateful to be sitting with y'all, and I want to just tell some stories and show some pretty pictures. I called this presentation "Adventures in Eco-Social Design," and it that title comes from embarking on what I did not know would be a 10-year journey to do a master's program with Gaia University. Gaia University is an unlearning institution. Definitely check them out. They're an interesting way to further an education in regeneration. If you're into any of the beautiful design methodologies that are about regeneration, like holistic management and permaculture. yeah, key line, all the forms of carbon farming and any work in community development, community nurture. Gaia U gives a very loose structure to pursue passions, to pursue projects, to do action learning, to document the things that we learn, and to share them with the world. I started my Gaia U orientation not knowing that I would also be in the middle of a much more complicated immigration process than I thought, with like a lot of heartbreak and a lot of really intense transitions. And so all of that I've kind of pulled into my on/learning journey with Gaia U. And finally this year in February, I kind of finished up all my writing and all my portfolio building, did my final presentation, which I believe I shared with Rachel. And so there's a little bit of that content that I'll share now, and a little bit of more things that didn't make it into that presentation. And so for me, eco-social design, it's just about holding that care of earth and care of people, because we're so often put in a position where we to care for one have to neglect the other, and our reductivist academic systems force us into these categories and these boxes of either or, and a lot of times we're pitted part of ourself against another part of ourself, if that makes sense. And so my background before Gaia U was in art and humanities as well as agriculture, and so I've always felt this pull to explore the very scientific, very grounded, literally. I grew up on a farm with horses and lots of animals, and turning compost from the time I was 10, had my own big pile of horse dung that I was very proud of. And also the arts, just really like being a feeler all my life, and really loving to create beautiful things, big and small. And so I found permaculture, and I found Gaia U and eco-social design as a way to bridge those things, to really like think about big art, think about community scale art. And yeah, this was a chance to explore some of those things. I'll start with sharing my screen so that I can give y'all some of these pictures. Rachel, can you guide me a little bit?
Yes, down at the bottom, there's a green button that should say share screen. And then once you click that, you can select the specific, like the PowerPoint window that you want to share.
Is it? Oh, sweet. I see. Thanks.
There we go.
Yeah. All right. What are you seeing right now?
I'm seeing all the slides on the side too. So if you go to presenter view, it should be good. Okay.
Play from start.
Perfect.
Cool. All right. Thanks for bearing with me. Cool. So this is an image from a series that I photographed, that I documented with artist and educator Jorge Restrepo, a dear friend and mentor of mine, at the agriculture school I went to in Honduras. It's a big school for Latin American standards. It's about 1,200 students, and it's got about 21, 22 countries from all over Latin America represented. And it's a learn by doing school. And so the time that you spend in the classroom is at least matched by the time that you spend in the field learning to do the things. You spend time in the processing plants learning how to not just milk the cows, but also process the milk, and you really get a crash course in every aspect of the food system. So it's a really magical place. It does, even though it started as more of a kind of do-it-yourself kind of place, it has gradually become, kind of been taken over by industry in some ways. There's still like a big organic farm, and there's still room to pursue a lot of very ecological minded agriculture styles. And there's a Cargill processing plant for meat, and there's a big Monsanto project where they do produce seed for Monsanto, and they call it Project M, just so that people don't get too freaked out. So yeah, it's definitely a big like a place where a lot of different ideologies meet. And Jorge Ivan started creating these sort of art happenings during his classes, and this was a project where he had his students nurturing a little black ball, and this was kind of the final expression of that, where they're throwing the ball up and catching it, and it's a reflection on stewardship of our earth and of the ecosystem. This is moon bath and negentropy, or negative entropy, where he's having the students like reflect on carbon capture and rising sea levels. And these are things that we're doing for like their final exam for his class, for his like human resources management class. And so this is from carrying capacity, where he kind of set his students out to pasture and then put them in a feedlot. And this is from air, where again it's sequestering a lungful of air into a black balloon and releasing it, and starting conversations that were school-wide about climate change and about emissions and about the way we do food and agriculture, and about how our system, our food systems work, and also integrating these non-rational and non-logical approaches to starting these discussions, very much like embodied through art happenings, through performance, through doing things that don't fit the norm of a final exam. And so this was work that in documenting and also in conspiring with him really got me thinking about art as a way to educate and to learn and to discuss these really, really tough things. There's then I did my GaiaU orientation, and I was had my mind blown by the attention there is to things like nonviolent communication and to reevaluation counseling and some of these more human things that are tools that are so necessary when you're talking about some, it can be something as simple or as complex as building a garden, a community garden or a home garden, or rethinking an entire food system. All of these human tools for human relating and for exploring what it is that a community or an individual or a client wants, when we're not really taught in our sort of Western education system, we're not really taught to think in terms of like, what is it that we truly desire? What is quality of life? What does it mean to love an ecosystem? What does it mean to love yourself? Does it mean to love your community? And so after that orientation and starting these projects, I also had the great fortune of finding and taking classes with Dave Jackie, who is an amazing educator, co-wrote Edible Forest Gardens with Eric Tonesmeyer. And it was his ecological design process, the way he iterated it, that kind of became for me the most integrative tool to do these projects, to think in terms of bringing people together to to rethink our environment. Dave also put in my hands a book called I Don't Want to Talk About It, Overcoming the Secret Legacy of Male Depression. And for those of us socialized male or male-ish, there's so much trauma that we don't deal with, that has ecological repercussions and that has great social repercussions. And so that sort of set me on a path of unlearning patriarchy within myself as a way of loving not just myself, but loving the ecosystem. Dave also modeled for me in his classes the use of the circle and John Young's art of mentoring methodology in a way that I could immediately integrate to the projects that I was doing at Zamorano at the ag school. This was shortly before coming to work at the D Lab, where I met Rachel. So this was a project where I took on the forestry instructor position at Zamorano. The forestry module for first years is infamous for being the place where you get bleeding blisters, and you do fire breaks that are kilometers and kilometers long, and you're working with a hoe, and you're working with machetes and rakes, and you're doing these huge clearings, huge fire breaks that literally make people's hands bleed. And so I was in charge of managing a large group of students for over a month. And I started using the circle and started breaking up, rather than trying to force work out of the students. I started having conversations that were about, like, what does it mean to you to love your environment? What does it mean to you to seek quality of life? And we were having these rounds before and after our work sessions, and we were learning about useful and edible plants that were growing right along the path where we were. And I developed like a really skillful way of using the machete without hurting yourself. And I recalled from when I was in first year how the instructor position that I was in was more of a position to police people and to extract work from them. And I went directly in the opposite direction and just got stoked on using the machete and on having conversations with these young folks from all over Latin America. And what ended up happening is we were talking for 2 or 3 hours out of the 4-hour work session, and we were working for 1 hour. But for that 1 hour, we were so stoked and so motivated, and we were working shoulder to shoulder, and we were so into it that at the end of the however many weeks it was that I was there, my supervisor came back from his trip, and he was astounded from how much work and how good the work was that we had done. And we hadn't even really broken a sweat, and nobody got a bleeding blister. And I really felt like there was some real magic that happened in us and on the landscape. Just doing fire prevention and doing education on, we were also like watching videos on like, Alan Savory's system for holistic management and for using herbivores to capture carbon, and thinking about like, well, what would happen if instead of machetes we had goats, and what if we thought about our herd and grazing differently than we do now. I got really, really excited to share some of the things that I had learned through my GaiaU orientation and through the carbon farming course in 2012. This is 2013 when this is happening. I don't think I've mentioned that. And we're taking breaks, we're watching videos, we're rethinking the like everybody wanted to have the machete when it was time for everybody to have the rake and the hoe. And we said, well, the machete is going to be a symbol of leadership, and the team leaders are going to get the machete, but they're going to get it on top of their hoe and their rake, not as a sort of like a supervisor or as an authority figure. Leadership is an added responsibility, and it's service and not authority. And yeah, you're a team lead, but you're not policing. You're like modeling how to work really hard and how to love this ecosystem. And we were clearing up trash, and we were loving life, swinging the machete, and we were having fun, and we were learning so much together. And then that brings me to D-Lab, and D-Lab is, as Rachel said, it's development lab, but there's a few other ways to reimagine that D. Some people call it design lab, design, dissemination, development, and really a lot of conversations happen around what those things mean. The first D-Lab was in MIT, and there definitely is like a development focus, an international development focus. And I welcomed in 2012 the team from UC Davis D-Lab, who was really looking for projects at our ag school. They were looking for projects to bring back to the UC Davis D-Lab students. And what we said to them, basically my bosses at the time in the environmental studies program and in forestry, what we said to them was, we don't want to export our problems to you and your students. What we want is our own D-Lab, and we should find a way to set up a D-Lab here because our students are competent and we have regional problems that should be addressed at a regional level. And this sort of like development model of white saviorism and industrialized folks coming from wealthier nations to kind of solve our problems is kind of inappropriate, and we don't want that. We want our own lab for us to work on our own issues. And so that was something that we kind of stood our ground, and the folks from the UC Davis D-Lab were like, yeah, we're down to help you make that happen. And that was really cool. Because then I was enlisted, as I'd gotten my green card a few years prior, and I was recruited to translate the program and to teach it in the summers. And that's what had me bouncing between Davis and Honduras, 2013, 14, and 15, getting the D-Lab up and running down there and participating in the D-Lab here at Davis. One of the most magical things that happened that I got to witness was, even though Zamoranos are learned by doing school, it is very scripted in some of the ways that it gets people to learn by doing. And so there's a set of competencies per module, a set of skills that you have to learn and that you have to kind of demonstrate that you know how to milk a cow or set up the automated milking system or bake bread. And everything's kind of, in a way, a recipe that you follow. And so D-Lab was different because here we kind of collect projects from the community, and we have a shop full of tools, and we have a space in the sawmill at that time where the students come and they pick a project and they just give it their all. There's a big dump and like recycling center where you can go and scavenge through for materials that you might be able to use. And you can use all of the tools. You learn how to weld. You basically have assistance to do it all safely, to learn the tools safely. And with those skills that you're learning, you, as a student in the D-Lab, end up battling your way through a project. So this is a couple of students working on a water ramp pump, and they were frustrated. They were just like, how do we do the thing? And I was like, I can't tell you how to do the thing because I don't know how to do the thing. Another thing that I learned from Dave is this ignorance-based worldview, which is such a relief from our conventional education system, where you don't have to have all the answers, but you have to have processes that you trust that'll help you figure something out. And when we were catching up with Rachel, we were just talking about what a relief it is to not have to know and to be able to admit that you don't know. And so I said to them, you have 4 hours a day for these next few weeks, and you have tools, and you have the internet, and I fully morally support you, but you're the one who's going to have to figure out how you do the thing. And they were like, all right, cool, let's like learn and figure it the hell out. And they did. So that was a really lovely experience, and quite an adventure to learn how to facilitate. And again, the circle was super crucial in getting all of these students to not have any accidents. You know, like when you're discussing every possible thing that could go wrong in the very first part of the session, we're circling up and we're assessing every risk. We're talking about every hazard. We're talking about all of the potential ways to avoid a hazard. And we're breathing and being still for a moment, teaching ourselves to observe really carefully as we're doing the things. All of these things made the program really successful, and it still is running to this day. I checked in with the Zamorano folks in January when I visited, February, and it's still one of their most successful and most like highly praised and highly reviewed modules, because students really get so much out of being handed a project and being handed the space and tools to just figure it out and to take a stab at it. And I feel like that's something that's really in line with the spirit of Yestermorrow and this community. This is one of my dear friends, Diego Moscoso. He's from Bolivia, and I believe he was in third year in the 4-year program, Crop and Animal Science, when he approached me. And he said, you know about, like permaculture stuff and design process. And so how do we turn this wreck of a yard between the two dorms, that were, a construction project, basically like what was left over between the construction of the two dorms. There was really compacted land between these two dorms and just kind of weeds growing. There was flooding during the rainy season. And he wanted to turn that into a little paradise. He'd taken this little corner where we would gather and play guitar, and we would eat, and we would jam out, and we would hang and spend time there. And he was like, I want to do this to the whole place. How do we get the community involved to make that happen? And so we designed a design process for ourselves. I had 2 months that summer. We pulled out edible forest gardens, and I had pattern language, and we started to articulate goals together. For those of you not familiar with ecological design process as expressed in edible forest gardens and as expressed in Dave Jackie's work, there's a goals articulation and a sort of like an establishment of like what's the potential here and what do we want to create, and then that moves into really like analyzing and assessing the site, and then you do design work on paper, and then implementation and evaluation. So we walked through those steps over the next 2 months. We kind of did a sort of full speed iteration of that cycle. And this is what the spot looked like from the second story of the dorm that was slightly at a higher elevation. We broke up the site into the scale of permanence. So from the most fixed features of the landscape. It's, geology and terrain, climate, to how the water flows, to what's growing on there. We learned to base map together. We brought all of these observations that all the students did. Even like some of our teachers came and participated, which was really cool. They were getting excited about it. And this was completely volunteer. And our one rule was, if it's not fun, for you, get out of here. Or if it's not fun, we're doing it wrong. And it really was just something we did in the afternoons to express this like love for our living situation, our dorm. So we were learning to triangulate and base map, and we were summarizing our observations all in one place. And then once we had, a clear idea of what we wanted to create, and also what we had and what we were observing, we kind of saw that like, there were already paths being like, that were kind of laid out just from what people walk already. Why are we going to struggle against that? And our intention is to, cultivate a comfortable and like a real quality of life where we can like hang out in nature, and love life together. So with this set of visions and this established potential and the set of observations, we gave everybody crayons and paper, and we just like watched the same patterns emerge over and over. Everybody wanted like a circle of like wood blocks, wood chunks around the middle, between the paths that were already kind of existing. And everybody was stoked on a banana ring. That was our design kind of emerging. I grew up on this horseback riding farm that my parents started. So there was tons of horse poop for us to scoop up and take truckloads of, to add tons of organic matter to the soil. Having fun while we were doing it. Returning some nutrients to the landscape, of course, as goddess intended. And this image I always really love showing, because on the bottom of the screen you can see the 2D design, and how on the landscape it's already taking shape just from drawing out the paths and laying out where the beds are going to be. And I think this slide, this image really expresses for me what ecological design process is about, and how those different scales and dimensions of art really nurture each other, and how you on a community wide scale can truly create art on the landscape, and art that is nurturing, that is resilient, that is functional, that is carbon capturing, that is nourishing in terms of food production. And we were showing the community what we're doing all along. We were just like having presentations, having little barbecues at night, living in the spot already, hanging out there. And this is what it looked like a year later. It was a little food forest just 1 year in, because the tropics are magical like that. Like you plant some sugarcane, you plant some bananas and papayas, and it's like magic. After one rainy season, there's life there, and there's rabbits and butterflies, and there's a little circle of trunks where people are just kind of shooting the breeze after a long work day or after class. And that project, I think, is one of my moments of really falling in love with ecological design process, and with eco-social design. Certainly an adventure. This slide is from a hill called the Hill of the Wizard, and it's what you see from where I grew up. And after that project in that garden, it's one of my moments of greatest grief, because my grandmother sold the land that I grew up on, sold the horseback riding school, and it it was something that really moved me to sever ties with my family for a while. It was a moment of really heart-wrenching, like deep grief, and grief that I'm still processing and still working with, using some of the tools that I learned in Gaia U, actually, like in my orientation. And so I'm grateful for that, because it's in this work, you can't run away from the grief, and running away from the grief into, you know, getting busy with projects, no matter how lofty and how beautiful, if you're not healing yourself, it's gonna come out sideways, and it's gonna be reflected in the work. And the you know, the healing of ecosystems, the nurturing of ecosystems goes hand in hand with the nurturing of the self, and the sort of like the deep internal healing and growth that has to happen as well. Yeah, that happening sort of pushed me to kind of establish deeper roots in California. There was you know, I still had and am working with like this resistance to really rooting here, just because I felt kind of pushed away from my home and kind of uprooted. And I'd always seen my immigration process as like, oh, I'll go and get citizenship, and then I'll probably just end up in Honduras and kind of keep working that land and making home down there. And as that possibility kind of evaporated, I've been grappling with the question of like, well, what does it mean to learn these things and learn these ways of loving the ecosystem when there isn't a place where I feel so deeply rooted that like I want to die there, you know, that I want to like live out my life there. And so what does it mean to be learning these tools of loving the earth and loving community when I'm having to establish community for myself in a new place? Yeah, really navigating those really tough questions. You know, what does it mean to become a U.S. citizen in this time when that is such a loaded thing, such a hard thing. This amazing human being, his name is Jose Miguel Holguin, and he's one of my best friends in the world, one of the people I love the most. And he approached me to help him with his thesis project at Zamorano, and he needed an advisor to help him create a food forest in this large piece of land that was the climate change agriculture module. And so I came on to write this methodology where we would adapt the ecological design process to something that could be written into a scientific paper, a process that he could walk the students of the climate change agriculture module through, as both they were the students and the head of that module, Ivana Bejerano. They were both client and kind of co-designers too, because we teamed up. They were articulating goals, they were articulating a vision and a potential for the place, and coming up with really beautiful and amazing things. And one of those was saying this, you know, this is the climate change agriculture module, and the integrated crop management module should be a production lot that is covered in trees. And as soon as that vision was articulated, we haven't even gotten through, you know, the next steps of the design process. We haven't even really finished analyzing the site. But the students that are currently cycling through, they have to pick a project, and their project that they pick is to plant trees, which was a project that hadn't been really previously available. That was just something that they came up with in response to this communal articulation of a potential for having tree cover. in this place that's supposed to represent education for a changing climate. And they immediately got to it. And so, we are like affecting change as we are engaging the community in this process. And that was a really beautiful thing to witness. And we're giving people crash courses in edible ecosystems and in restoration and in regeneration and permaculture as we're moving along. And we're kind of just bringing people along. We're bringing along like 64 students as like co-designers and kind of clients, kind of designers, and it's messy and magical. And our kind of stopping point was this is Jose Miguel's handiwork, is a sort of like a schematic design, really, like of what's going to go where, ideally. He won first place. The first kind of permaculture thesis at this big kind of industrial ag school, it gets the recognition of best thesis for that year, and kind of was the first way that a lot of people heard about permaculture in that community and about edible forest gardens and ecological design process. And that's a very beautiful document that where we pull in things from Jackie's work and from holistic management and from permaculture, and are integrating all these design methodologies that have so much overlap in the idea that we are really trying to, on a community level, establish or identify what's essential to this place and what is the potential there, and how we can allow that to unfold more beautifully. That then took me to Brazil. Through the D-Lab work, we were part of this network called International Development Innovation Network, which hosts these summits, International Development Design Summits, IDDS, and we were on the team to create one for this community in the Amazon, where again we're trying to not engage in these very problematic ways that development has played out for communities all across the less dollar-rich nations, and where we're actually trying to kind of reclaim development to actually halt the world-devouring machine rather than assist it, which is what so much of what is called development is actually just industrialization and kind of serving economic growth at the expense of the ecosystem being turned into goods to sell and community relationships being commodified into services also to sell. So we went through this same ecological design process in community with a association of organic growers in Boa Vista do Acará, this tiny little town in the Amazon. We created a vision tree. We wrote songs about like what we wanted to see in the community and in the landscape. I kind of got adopted by the community and made very important, very lasting friendships. And we're really every day and in every moment there, we're grappling with how do we not fall into these problematic patterns of international development, and kind of being on our toes and catching ourselves as these things were happening. And so one of the prime examples from that was Deborah, my friend, was the community point person for one of the design teams. And there's, a person from Spain and a person from the States on this team. And they've kind of taken over the project, and they're trying to design some some enterprise with the beautiful aromatic plants that are grown by the association. And Deborah has kind of checked out. She's like not feeling it, and she's disappointed with the process, and she's just not into it. And so we went to look for her at her house, and sat with her and talked to her, and she was like, my heart's not really in it. And we were like, no, like this is your project. Like this is a project for your community, and if what they're coming up with is not serving you, it's your vision that needs to guide this, and it is you're the one who knows, and nobody from the outside can tell you what is good for you. And we talked about, kind of continued the conversation that we'd been having for many days and in the months leading up to the summit, about like what models are out there for cooperatives and for different ways of doing tourism that don't pave over an ecosystem to bring a lot of people in from the city, and what are some of the alternatives to this world devouring way. And there was things that she would say like, I want that, and I was like, write it down and share it with us, like write it, take the time to write it out, and make it explicit, and let that vision guide us. And this articulation that she came up with was so beautiful. I'm going to read it out. She said, the community I want to leave for my child is a place where he has access to education and can learn with the forest, where he has access to healthcare and heals with the herbs, where he can have a good house to live in and also know that the whole forest around him is his home, a place in which when those we love are no longer with us, we can remember them and the relationship they had with nature, take pride in it, take pride in being of the country, being of the forest, being of Boa Vista do Acará, because I work and take care that all the children, young ones, and grown-ups can have opportunities in this community, not having to leave it to have a quality education, to transform the hearts of our visitors, which they did. And that every person from here and every visitor can take a good example of unity and care with our great mother, the earth. And of course, by the time she finished reading that, actually, no, a few words in, I was already crying. I was already sobbing. And I was deeply moved that we didn't just kind of sit idly by while she was disengaged and checked out, and we, as foreigners, as guests in that place, were able to say like, we have nothing, no solutions for you that are better than the ones that you can create for yourself. And to really step into that certainty to just like uphold and encourage their visioning and their articulating what they need for themselves, because it is a pattern. Growing up in Honduras, I've seen it, and certainly in my visits to Brazil, learned of acai growers are shipping off their acai, and then with the few dollars that they get for that are having to take an hour boat trip into town to buy spaghetti to come back and cook that. And there's real tragedy to the way that the food systems kind of get transformed as people get excited about products like that. Quinoa is another great example. A couple of gardens got started up. This is Deora's beautiful design work. I think I need to take a sip of water for a second. I don't know, Rachel, do you think this might be a good time for questions? I have a few pictures that I want to show of build projects that I've been part of through the Burning Man community. I've been on technical crew, so maybe I'll get through those last few slides and then we can open it up to questions. I don't know how much time we actually have.
Yeah, we have, we're flexible, 10 minutes or so. And I have not received any questions yet. I think people
Awesome.
are probably feeling like I am and just mesmerized by the stories you're telling. So yeah, feel free to continue. And if there's any questions that people have
Cool.
between now and the next few slides, enter them in the question and answers box, and I will ask them at the end.
Sweet. Cool. So I quit D-Lab to naturalize and really do a lot of self work, a lot of healing work myself, do a lot of painting. Finished my Gaia U program finally after nearly 10 years of pulling, the things that were happening to me in life, the big things that I was moving through, into my writing around, um, yeah, the output packets that are the structure that Gaia U gives you to document your learning and to kind of track the skills you're flexing as you move along. Um, and so I, through Gaia U, got involved with the temple crew at Burning Man. The temple in 2017 was a project that was using wood from dying trees, from beetle infestations and clearings that the energy company was doing. And the temple, for folks who are not familiar with the temple at Burning Man, or with the community of Burning Man, the temple is a place for grief. The temple is a place where it's one of the biggest art installations. It's a big build, and people are building several months before, and then are shipping parts of this big structure off to the playa. And then there's 2 weeks prior to the event where people come onto the playa and build, kind of finish the temple and hand it over to the city as a blank canvas, where people are free to come in and create their altars. And people come in and leave their journals to burn. People leave their wedding dresses. People leave their instruments they no longer play. People bring their pictures of their loved ones who have moved on. And write on the walls. People go there and sing. People go there and cry. People go there and laugh. People go and meditate. People go make love. It's really a temple of the community, a temple of the people, and a place for the processing of deep sorrow, deep grief. And the space that is created is really transformational and really magical. And it's a different design every year. And there's a huge crew, of which I was only another person with an impact driver. And it was an experience that I really have loved and thrown myself kind of headfirst into. I learned of Temple Crew through one of the independent reviewers, independent scientists with Gaia University, Lee Klinger, who his work, Sudden Oak Life, is directly related to the fires that we're seeing in California. Basically, fires as an expression, these huge fires as an expression of mismanaged lands, and the deep need to return stewardship of the land to the people that can love it. And if that's not us, we should know it, or we should get on that boat. And it's really the work of loving the earth and loving the self, because we want to be able to breathe, and we want to give ourselves a good lungful of clear air, becomes the work of decolonization, and thinking in terms of addressing the hundreds of years of injustice that we're in legacy of. the temple is built with the permission of the Pyramid Lake Paiute First Nations folks, and they come and bless it every year. And they also come and clear the space, clear the area after everybody has burned their sorrows there. And this image that I took of the temple 2019 is one that really really moves me. And I think I'd like to end my presentation with this image. And I say that at the end of this journey, I don't really have answers. I don't know what's next for me after graduating, like right before COVID hit. I don't know what next beautiful project, art, big or small. Some of my paintings are in the background. I've been working on those for quarantine. But I think I can end with this this very question affirming quote of Rilke, where they say, "I want to beg you as much as I can to be patient towards all that is unsolved in your heart, and to try to love the questions themselves, like locked rooms and like books that are written in a very foreign tongue. Do not now seek the answers which cannot be given you, because you would not be able to live them. And the point is to live everything. Live the questions now. Perhaps you will then gradually, without noticing it, live along some different day into the answer." Thank you. Rilke.
I feel like we should all take a deep breath and really let everything you shared sink in. Thank you, Jorge. That was really amazing, incredible. I really appreciate you speaking to grief so much. I know a lot of people are feeling grief of loss of all different shapes and colors and forms, what with the loss of easy mobility, easy connection due to the pandemic, the loss of the ways that we've seen the world before, with a lot of people opening their eyes to the ingrained racism and other issues in this society, and even the grief of losing people. And there's a lot of grief in the world right now. So thank you for kind of speaking to the power of the earth to help us with our grief. I've been thinking of that a lot too. We have one question that I think maybe I'll find a way to connect you and the asker. Joshua asked if you have any ideas or recommendations on how to initiate a collaborative community development project that's focused on resilience and regeneration. That feels like a big one, but I wonder if you have any initial feelings on that.
Yeah. But the first thing that comes to mind is ask neither forgiveness nor permission. We, for that first project, the Big Garden Project, we kind of, it was a stealth move on our parts. We organized as students, really grassroots level, and kind of talked to the dean after things were already underway and as things were already kind of happening. And so that's one way, is to find your people, find the humans that are, your co-conspirators and allies and helpers, and the people that believe in it too. And don't try to go it alone. Do it together. Do it with friends. Clearly, we exist within structures that may stand in the way if we don't work with them, appropriately. And so, look up the work done at UMass Amherst, Permaculture Your Campus. Ryan Harb, those folks did amazing things, and I think they're still doing incredible things, turning empty lots into food gardens for, and they got like the like campus dining services involved. And so there are ways to work within these bigger structures Certainly the thesis project that I worked with Jose Miguel on was kind of within the structure of academia, and that took a lot of just like figuring out how to adapt this very human, very collaborative process to something that you could write into a paper. That was the challenge. So those are some ideas off the top of my head. Yeah, I think definitely my biggest sense of like, the beginnings of a line towards answering that is put out feelers for the humans that are down, to work with you and to make it happen together, because collaboration is like the way. Once people get excited about it, it's kind of hard to stop it, hard to keep it from happening.
I love that. Collaboration is key.
Yeah.
We have another question from Josh. He asked if you could talk a little bit more on buying local food versus international, and what foods could be avoided when not local.
That's a tough question. That's a really tough question, and I'll say why. Because a lot of people that are able to make an income, because like if your ecosystem and community are collapsing because of the world devouring machine, and your lifeline, kind of the ability to put food on the table, is coming from selling your acai or your quinoa to urbanized, industrialized folks, then boycotting that might do more harm than good. And so I definitely would say learn as much as you can about the people that are producing it, and if there's there's the coffee I buy is Pachamama coffee because of all of their certifications and all of their cooperative model, and the way that they do things, and the way that they have just a better deal for their growers, that they collaborate with and that they team up with. And I buy coffee from regions that I have my heart in, like Nicaragua and Guatemala. I don't think they have a Honduras coffee yet. But yeah, they're like my neighbors, and I want to support that. So honestly, I don't know. Yeah, I eat chocolate, and I live with an amazing chocolate making genius who is also really, really conscious about the chocolate that she buys as source material. And she just learns as much as she can about the humans, the communities, and the ecosystems that are producing this beautiful thing that we're putting in our bodies. So I'm afraid I don't have a satisfying answer, but learning as much as possible about it is the start.
Perfect. Thank you, Jorge.
Yeah.
I don't have any more questions coming in, but I do have a comment from Erin, who's an instructor and a board member at Yestermorrow and another amazing human being. She says, thank you for your attuned work in the world, and I want to thank you too. It's really special to reconnect with you and see what you've been up to for the last 6 years. It's really, really special. I feel lucky, and to be able to share that with everybody else that's tuned in. So thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
So much.